You're listening to the Mind Flipping Podcast, where you'll find tools and tips to help you renovate and update your mind and life.
Phyllis, thanks so much for being on the Mind Flipping Podcast.
Thanks, Rick, for having me.
My pleasure. As we prepared, we kind of talk a little bit before we click record, and I love to have guests like you that have a lot of the high points, highlights, things that interest me and our listeners. And I love that you said, you know, you're known, your clients, people in the field know you as an expert in positive psychology, brain science, and EFT and tapping. And those are all things that get me excited, and I'm pretty sure our listeners. But some of our listeners are new to this podcast or to those fields. So if you were at a networking event or a cocktail party and those things came up, do you have a quick way of describing those or what you do?
Wow, I've never been asked that succinctly, but what I do is change people's lives in a fraction of the time that it would take doing traditional therapy.
How do you do that?
I think over the course of our conversation, you'll learn about that. But what we know now about science, brain research especially, is that the brain is something that continues to evolve. We now know that we grow new neural pathways, and we're not just stuck with what we have. Like, you're not just born with it. And it used to be believed that you can't change habits easily, or personality traits, or things that we might want to change because we don't like being that way, or we don't like those patterns and habits that we have. And through positive psychology, which is focused on happiness and bringing out the best in people so that they're more resilient and that they can make different choices. When you come from a survival, like the survival thinking and survival brain versus the ability to think in terms of possibilities and solutions, it's a game changer.
Absolutely. Well, that was a good answer to my question. And I asked it like that because I think a lot of our listeners are in the fields of psychology and hypnosis and meditation and neuroscience and in the helping fields. And it's hard sometimes to put into words what we do. The fact that we can help people quickly, that we can shorten the change curve, if you will. And so you answered it succinctly and in a great way. And there's so many different ways to answer it. But a couple of things that I want to follow up on. So positive psychology, how did you get into that field? And is it Martin Seligman that's kind of the father of that?
Right. So I went through this period of where I was in high demand. My private practice specialty was high conflict divorce.
That's right.
And I loved doing the work, and I was great at it. And I became pretty popular with the judges and attorneys because I was the only mental health professional that would go to court without a subpoena, because I wanted to see what happened to my custody evaluation cases. I ended up with an 8-month waiting list. And I took on way too much work, more than I could handle. The deadlines required me to work 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to get the report writing done. And while I loved doing the work, there wasn't a me left by the end of doing this for 5-6 years. And so I was pretty much fried on the edges and heading for burnout in every area of my life. So I took some time off, and at that time where I wasn't doing all that work, I focused on me and dove into positive psychology. And it made a huge difference. And I went to some trainings on brain research and domestic violence, which was part of my required training as a custody evaluator. And like a light bulb went on, and I realized that, wow, I could piece positive psychology and brain research and these things, and the brain lights up like it's awful for kids when they're in high conflict divorce cases and parents are fighting and all that. But there was a point in time where I realized, wow, what if I could work with people who really want to make positive, lasting changes and who weren't court ordered to see me?
Hmm.
And that's when I made a huge shift. I shifted my whole practice. I don't do court work anymore. But that was 2005.
That's awesome. So you stumbled upon positive psychology kind of as you took a break and focused on yourself.
Right, because it wasn't taught when I went to school over 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you Googling? Do you remember? Did it come up in some of your like? How did you stumble upon positive psychology? Do you remember that?
I don't, but I think that I probably heard somebody interviewed.
Okay.
And I knew that positive psychology, a course on it, was like the #1 course at Harvard.
Oh.
At the time. Yeah. There were several things I think that probably led me to it. And
That's awesome.
The rest is history.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so I know I think a couple of his books. Is one of them called Learned Optimism?
I believe so.
Martin Seligman. So you touched on it briefly, but again, can you give us a little bit more about the difference between perhaps the training you got 30 years ago for helping people around psychology, the way our brain works, the way we facilitate change, and what the field of positive psychology focuses on?
Oh, I love that question. I've not been asked that, but when I look back at my education, it really helped me to develop assessment skills. And so that is one of the things that I pride myself. I got a solid education in assessment skills. But treatment was a whole other thing than it is today. Treatment when I went to school was based on the medical model, focusing on what's wrong, doing a diagnostic, following whatever protocols that they said are the method of treatment,
right,
that we should be using, and medication, which I was never really in favor of, but saw the need when I worked in a day treatment facility. I wanted those people on their meds.
Right.
For ordinary people dealing with like anxiety, situational depression, it's not always as necessary, I think, as doctors are so quick to prescribe because they just want to get you out and functioning, which I get.
Right.
But when we can look at positive psychology and brain research, and this whole new field of epigenetics has come forth, and be able to tailor a specific treatment modality or a way of helping people get to the source of what's going on and not a Band-Aid approach. And that's a game changer, because once you make those changes, you can never go back.
Yeah. And so that 30-year ago training was more Band-Aid. It was looking at what was broken, mm-hmm. rather than where's the solution. And
right, and giving people tools. And there's several colleagues of mine, and they used to joke and say, Phyllis doesn't have a toolkit, she has a shed.
I love it.
And there are so many amazing ways out there to build resiliency, to build coping skills, to shift what doesn't work any longer, so that you're not just struggling out there, flailing, trying to figure out, okay, that doesn't work, but now what do I do?
Yeah, it's such an exciting time to be in our fields. My primary field is hypnosis, hypnotherapy, but in so many ways, it's just like you described. It's helping people make changes quicker and easier. Mm-hmm. And I tell people that are getting in it, it's so exciting with the latest findings in neuroscience, and that just so much that is helping explain the way things work, why things work quickly. And so, speaking of your tool shed, you're an author, a 2-time author, and your latest book, Tired and Hungry No More, right?
Right.
And I love the tagline. Can you give us the tagline?
It's called Not Your Ordinary Guide to Reclaiming Your Health and Happiness.
And so how did you come up with the tagline, and what does that mean?
So I was with a group of friends and we were just brainstorming. And then one person said, what you do is not ordinary. So we have to use not your ordinary in there. And so it was this collaboration of friends when we got together that came up with the title. And why it's not ordinary is because I start the book with what to do to get a healthy mind. How to get your brain on board. Because if you don't get your brain on board, forget it. It's going to be like every other thing that you've probably tried to change. A New Year's resolution. I'm going to try this diet. I'm going to go exercise every day. Like, we have great intentions, but the carrying it out doesn't seem to correlate because of survival thinking.
And what do you mean by that, survival thinking? I think I know, but I'd love to hear it.
So survival thinking is your brain trying to keep you safe. And if you don't survive, then it failed. And whether you call it the brain, the subconscious, there's a part of us, and I call the early child programming, the coping skills we develop to survive. Those are the things that are running in the background that most people aren't aware of. They have no idea why they keep sabotaging things or struggling to get where they want to go. They want it really bad, and it just isn't happening. And so when we run up, it's like running up against a wall, because there's a part of you that might say, gosh, it's just not safe to be successful. It's not safe to lose weight. It's not safe to get a promotion, like go after what you want. And there's like dozens of reasons why that might not be safe, but we aren't thinking of that usually. Like, most people think, well, I want to be healthy and I want to look good, so why would it not be safe to lose weight? Well, how about you might get some new attention? You might get attention you're not used to, and that would feel uncomfortable. Or in a job situation, if you got a promotion, that means you've got more responsibility. That might not feel safe. So that
safety bias, if you will, which is automatic, on whether we call it, subconscious, that old programming, is that wall that comes up, and so through the years you've developed this tool shed to kind of get through the safety bias.
Well, there's my book Brain Makeover has 52 weekly readings. So there's 52 different things to think about or do differently to create possibility thinking. And so it's not just like glossing over. I want permanent results. I want people to think about something in a new way and know that instead of focusing on the problem, that they can focus on the solution.
I love it.
Once you shift, and this is probably the biggest shift that I could identify maybe in my lifetime that I've had, it's so significant to go from being problem focused and looking back to make sure I don't repeat past things that were uncomfortable, to looking forward and saying, here's what I want to go. And yes, I may have these things that are holding me back, but I'm willing to work on them. And by working on them as they come up, it just makes the journey so much more rewarding and satisfying. And it's no longer a struggle. And that's what I want for people. That's why I've written these 2 books in the way that I have.
And as you're describing it, I'm hearing a reframe from anxiety to excitement. That when we shift the focus on solutions rather than problems, it might still be scary, but in an exciting way rather than a...
Right. I think that in a hopeful way as well.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people lose hope when they get discouraged, and if they've got too many things that go haywire, they can give up really easily because they don't know that there's a different way.
Yeah, and I see it a lot with clients that come to me with different forms of anxiety. There's that I like to tell them a little bit of subconscious confusion or a simple misunderstanding that those feelings that you have as you're pushing yourself or stretching or trying to help yourself um, uh, don't have to hold you back. That can be excitement rather than anxiety, and keep going.
Right. One woman, when I was going to be, as being on interviewed on a telesummit, and it's some pretty big name people on there, and this was the first summit that I got invited to about 4 years ago. And so one woman, she told me, anxiety is just excitement without breath. So breathe.
That's pretty good.
And have fun with it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a different perspective. I can adopt that one.
Yeah. Anxiety is excitement without breath. Just breathe.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. And so, where does EFT and tapping come into all this? And for, I think, a good portion of our listeners are familiar with that, but can you describe what that is and how this has been a big part of your tool shed, I assume?
Sure. Yes. I actually knew Roger Callahan and his wife when I was studying for the orals. In California, we had to do written and orals. The orals were more anxiety-provoking than childbirth. And I spent 6 months preparing for it because you could only take it twice a year. And if you didn't pass, you had to wait 6 months. So my husband and I knew Roger and his wife, and he was perfecting EFT tapping. He stumbled upon tapping on meridian points, kind of like I'm tapping on my eyebrow here.
Yeah.
And while studying that, he was talking with this woman who had a severe phobia to water. So he asked her, where do you feel the anxiety in your body? And it was in her stomach. So he asked her to do this tapping just on one point. And after 5 minutes of them talking and tapping, she said, I don't feel that feeling in my stomach anymore. Well, she couldn't even put her hands in water. She was so afraid someone had to put it on a washcloth or a towel for her. She was able to put her hand in his swimming pool.
Wow.
So he stumbled upon pairing this tapping, and it's similar to acupuncture, but without needles. So you're freeing stored energy is what acupuncture is. But when you add statements and you're talking about what's true for you and how you feel, you're actually releasing stored emotions. And it is so powerful. Research is also showing that it calms the amygdala, the part of the brain that triggers fight or flight and stress hormones. And we all know that stress hormones like cortisol ups our inflammation, ups all the markers for weight gain, and carrying all that extra stress leads to compromised immune functioning and difficulty sleeping and even cravings. So there's a huge health component that goes with not thinking right.
And so on that note, the health component, and earlier you talked about, getting a healthy brain. In your book, Tired and Hungry No More, is it about mind, body, brain health and tapping play a role in this?
It focuses on getting your mind working in the direction of where you want to go. Okay. That's probably the most simple way to put it. Instead of looking back to avoid what you don't want to have happen again. Okay. We don't want to experience negative things, struggles, past failures, things like that again. So moving forward, having that thought process, the tapping releases stored emotions and rewires the brain. So you can remember an event, but you won't have the emotional reaction to it. You can also build new neural pathways by tapping. And in my book, I have tapping scripts that actually have possibility statements so that anybody who is new to tapping or doesn't know what to say, it's in there, and it gives them a place to start with. And then if they want to fine tune it, then they're all good to go with that.
Awesome. Is there anything that you could share with us briefly now?
Sure. I can do a round of tapping for my book.
Oh, that would be awesome. And yeah, that would be cool. So, podcast listeners, we are recording a video of this, and while it's not necessary that you watch this, perhaps you would like to. And so, head to mindflipping.com, look at episode number 85, and we'll have the video on there. If you're driving, just keep driving and come back to this later. But that'd be great, Phyllis, if you could kind of give us a little example and walk us through something.
Sure. So the tapping points are easy. I'll just go through them quickly. And I have a video on my website that has the tapping points, an intro to tapping. So I'm sure that my website info will be on the.
Yep, we'll put that in the show notes. But for those that are listening, which website is it?
PhyllisGinsberg.com.
Nice and simple, PhyllisGinsberg.com. And again, that link will be in the show notes at mindflipping.com, episode number 85. So if you could show us the points, I'm gonna tap along with. So go ahead.
Perfect. And I encourage everyone to tap along if they're doing it. Okay, so first is at the eyebrow closest to where the nose is. You're just tapping on where it starts, and then move across your eyebrow to the side of the eye. Next is under the eye, under the pupil, and then under the nose. It might feel funny or look funny if you've never done this before, but it works. In the chin crease, then on the collarbone, under your arm, about 4 inches under the armpit, and top of head. All right, looking good.
Excellent.
So I'm going to do one on tired, because after getting your brain on board and thinking in the right direction, getting your body and mind the rest it needs is the next most important thing. I think that that's even more important than what we eat, is to deal with tired. And it's an epidemic. So we're going to start at the eyebrow. We're doing the same tapping points. And now you can repeat after me. I'm tired.
I'm tired.
Side of the eye. I'm exhausted.
I'm exhausted.
Under the eye. I'm tired of pretending everything is okay when it's not.
I'm tired of pretending everything's okay when it's not.
Under the nose. I'm tired of holding it together.
I'm tired of holding it together.
Chin. I'm tired of trying to make everyone else happy.
I'm tired of trying to make everyone else happy.
Collarbone. I'm tired of accommodating others.
I'm tired of accommodating others.
Under the arm. I'm tired of putting myself and my needs last.
I'm tired of putting myself and my needs last.
Top of head. I'm tired.
I'm tired.
And take a deep breath. Do you notice anything, thoughts or feelings come up?
That those are great validating statements that I think we can all relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That first round is for acknowledgement. Because if we don't first acknowledge what's going on, our body's not going to buy, the brain and the body is not going to buy into something new and think, wow, I'm just going to shift this and do the whole positive affirmations. I think they bring up more stress if you're not ready for them.
Kind of lays the foundation for congruence a little bit.
That's one of the words I use that's in the first page of my book is congruence. If we can get your thoughts, feelings, and actions all congruent, you are on your way.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
So, and then from there, there's more scripts?
There are. There's one for possibilities, and then there's one for anchoring in. And I have 10 different topics in the book that all have the 3 different rounds of tapping.
Excellent. So do you have any personal or professional mind flipping stories where, whether it was EFT or any of the things from your tool shed, shifted, people flipped their minds in, as you said, as we just started this conversation, in a quicker, faster way?
Probably one that stands out from more recently, I was working with a woman that she was going for her 1-year review at her job. They brought her in and paid her a pretty significant salary based on her past sales or performance with another company. She wasn't doing as well as she was expected to. So she was dreading this review, expecting that she might get fired or a pay decrease. She was really anxious. She was defensive. She knew she couldn't go into this meeting feeling like that, and with those thoughts. And so she came to me, and what we were able to do was I did tapping with her to acknowledge her thoughts and feelings. She was able to get to a place where she said, I let myself down this year. She didn't do all the things she could have. She wanted to reach those goals, but because they seemed so far out for learning a new company and all their processes, that she didn't complain to anyone. She didn't ask for help or support. Her manager just let her run with things. And when I heard all that, I was able to help shift her to a place of, instead of feeling like I am done, they're going to probably fire me, to this was a difficult year. It's hard to learn a whole new company, system, product line in a year, and not having the support that I needed from my manager. So we made a list of all the things that she would like to have in order to make this more successful this coming year. And they bought it, and it worked. And they didn't reduce her pay. Obviously, they didn't fire her. She called me after. She said she went in there. She was calm. She knew she had a plan of action, and she was so relieved because she thought she would have to pack and move and sell her place. And it was a big to-do. Living in the Bay Area is pretty expensive. And so, it was a huge to-do.
It was daunting.
Yes. And we did that in a 1-hour session.
Was tapping involved, or? Yeah?
Yes. Yeah, okay. We did a lot of tapping.
And did she tap before she went in for the review? Do you know?
That I don't know. She might have, but once I got her shifted, and this is the piece that we talked about, is that she had a plan going forward that she felt congruent with. She felt like, this is real, this is true for me, this is something that I could buy into, and if they say yes to it, I'm willing to work because I know it's possible. Where the previous was just fear and worry and stress and overwhelm and anxiety and not wanting to get out of bed in the morning. So now she had like a whole total shift to something that was doable.
That's fantastic. I envision her. Was it an in-person meeting? Did she come to your office? Yeah.
Yeah, in my office.
Yeah, coming in with that one identity and vision and mindset for that review, and leaving it in your office, and leaving the office and going to that review with a whole different identity mindset, and that the tapping and everything that went with it just left it there in your office. It was a thing of the past.
Yeah, and she didn't just leave it on my doorstep or in my office. It's like gone. And I have this gift, I can feel energy. Nice. And I didn't have this before. Well, mostly when I was doing court work, I wasn't doing tapping until I came back from my sabbatical. And then I started doing tapping with high conflict divorce people when I wasn't doing their evaluations, but actually seeing them like kids and reunification, things like that, like pretty intense stuff. And I was getting great results, but it wasn't until I shifted to the clients that I'm working with now. I can actually feel energy when it's leaving. I can feel like if something's not right, I'll feel it in my back usually, like, oh, that statement doesn't work for you. Huh. So it's become quite a gift that I've embraced.
That's really cool. There's been a few guests on the podcast here that have talked about tapping into their own energetic wisdom, if you will, and intuition.
Yes.
Do you have any tips for doing just that, for shifting into that greater awareness?
I definitely do. And I've given a lot of thought to this because I think it's so important, trying to realize, okay, how did this happen? For one, I'll tell you, if you are super stressed, you don't have room to hear. If you are rushing around, you're going to miss the little signs, whispers, however you're going to get your intuition and guidance. And so slowing things down, whether you want to meditate, whether it's just taking a pause and saying, asking yourself a question like, what else is possible here? Or what's my next best step? And asking yourself questions will open up for answers, but you've got to be still enough and patient. And it might not come right away. It could come. Sometimes I'll ask myself a question like, am I ready for this? And it'll be a no. Well, then I do tapping on it. And other times I'll ask, well, what's my next best thing? Oh, time to work on your newsletter. So instead of me just like, oh my gosh, I have this big to-do list, I might look at it and say, oh, what's in my best interest to work on first? Or what do I have the energy for right now?
That's wonderful. So slowing down, being still, pausing. But the real key I heard is among all that is to ask yourself powerful questions, whatever questions bubble up, and then listen and wait and come back.
Right. Because sometimes it'll come in a dream, or might be while you're in the shower or washing your hands. Water's a good conductor of energy, and a lot of people get great ideas. Guys when they're shaving. I've heard all kinds of stories.
That's so cool. I love it.
And so it's usually, and even driving, when you're doing something monotonous or something routine and you're not fighting it. I've embraced this concept of everything with ease. And I've become to get known for it.
Nice.
But when you don't fight things and you allow, and this was a huge shift for me, is this concept of allowing for the process. You can't push the river. It's going to happen in its own time. And the more that we can allow for what's to come and move forward more gently than the stress and overwhelm. And, I was there with the near burnout. I think that's what opens up the ability to connect to something that, like intuition and guidance.
That's awesome. As you're describing that, I'm thinking of a previous podcast guest, Mark Gober, who talked about the end to upside down thinking and about tapping into consciousness beyond the brain. The consciousness doesn't actually start in the brain. It's outside of us. And so I hear in your practice, your suggestion to slow down, to allow, it allows us to tap into that greater wisdom that when we're stressed and busy, we don't tap into.
No. When we think we have to do it all, we're not even open. And a lot of people probably have not had that experience to even know what's possible.
And I like how you talked about not pushing or forcing the river.
It can't push the river.
Can't push the river. That's pretty cool.
I'm willing to work hard, but I'm not willing to swim upstream anymore. I am not a fish. I'm not a salmon.
Let's go with the flow.
Exactly.
I like it. So on that note of ease, of going with the flow, a feeling of softness comes to me. And so this may be the perfect transition for the spackle round, the softness of spackle. So are you ready for some spackle round questions, Phyllis?
Sure. I don't know what we're in for, but go for it.
Let's do it. So for our listeners that don't know, our spackle round is that time where we fill in some holes. And spackle starts out soft and it fills in holes admirably. So let's go through the spec around, we'll spin the wheel of spec around questions. And the first one that comes up is there a common belief in your field that you disagree with?
I have come to disagree with that people need weekly therapy and that it's going to take a long time. And the idea of coming and just talking about a problem over and over and over is going to provide a permanent solution.
And I'm guessing this change has come from experience.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Do you get pushback from colleagues about that?
No, I mean, I do my own thing and I'm not in an office with other colleagues, but when I was doing tapping, they all wanted to learn it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I think they're open to it, but there's people who have their own modalities that they use. Sure. And this might or might not be for everyone.
Yeah.
I just find it highly effective and I'm very skilled at it.
I'm involved in a few different hypnosis groups, and we just had a group call this weekend, and we have some therapists in there that talk about just that, that they love hypnosis because it shortens the cycle, and while it's not, it doesn't short term help their business because they're free, they're letting their clients go, the work is done. But long term, the referrals are increasing. And so whether it is hypnosis or EFT or any of the other modalities, solution focused practitioners are excited to learn these types of things.
Mm-hmm. I would much rather have this exciting, satisfying career of helping people and seeing them a few times than keeping them for 6 months to a year and not seeing them make progress.
Right. Or longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Another speckle round question. What's been the most difficult part of your life?
Ooh. Well, growing up with a mom who was in chronic pain with arthritis and migraine headaches, and that was from the time I was born. I know she had migraine headaches, or arthritis started at 19 for her.
Wow.
And so I was the one that did most of the cooking and cleaning and got the brunt of her anger because she was not very happy. And then she was diagnosed with breast cancer at 37 and died within a year.
Wow. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yeah, but it's truly been a gift, because if it weren't for those experiences, I wouldn't have written Tired and Hungry No More, because that's the book that I wish that she could have had.
Mm.
And, when she was probably in her 20s, to deal with things I know she didn't deal with, and be able to take care of herself and eat healthy. And, I didn't even have to put don't smoke in there, because the majority of places now you can't even smoke in. Right. But she smoked, she didn't exercise, she was overweight, unhappy. All of those are markers for a compromised immune system and disease. And the emotional component for illness, the Centers for Disease Control, which is a conservative organization, listed at 85%, which is enormous. So
say that again. What's 85%?
85% of all illnesses have an emotional component.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge. And that's why I wrote the book as I did. And I started it with getting your brain on board and then the tapping, so that you can deal with what's getting in the way, because those emotional pieces are huge. If you don't deal with some of the big stuff, and I didn't deal with grief until I had my first daughter 10 years after my mom died. And I could feel the physical sensations in my body. I had ovarian cysts and developed asthma and allergies. And I truly believe that once I dealt with those issues, like once and for all, that's why I don't have those issues anymore.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And, as somebody who's in the helping field, we, like me and like so many of our listeners, we often see that most difficult part turns into something wonderful. And there was your own health, that improved, and the book, which is going to make an exponential difference. So thank you for sharing that and taking it a step further and doing something with it.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like I'm on purpose. I'm doing what I'm here to do. And I had to have that childhood in order to be who I am today.
Absolutely. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
So you mentioned getting your brain on board, focusing on brain health. I just want to expand on that a little bit, but what do you mean by that? And what's in the book around that?
So it's that congruence of having your thoughts, feelings, and actions congruent. Because everything starts with a thought. And some people think maybe a feeling, but I truly believe if you look at a feeling, there's a thought connected to it that happened before. It's the meaning that we make out of situations that determines our feelings. And once you figure out that meaning, or you just know there's something off, you don't even have to know exactly what it is. As long as you know, like, there's something not right, then you've got something to work with. I love fear, anxiety, and resistance. When somebody comes in with that, I'm like, great, now we've got something to work with. I can deal with that. But if you tell me, like, I can't do this and I don't know why, then we have to go on a little fishing expedition.
Yeah.
I like that part too.
Yeah.
But most people, they know if they have some resistance to something.
Yeah. And so getting your brain on board is really kind of helping your clients, the readers, understand the way our brain works, and kind of giving the client, the reader, the ability to pause, to create the gap between action and reaction, thought and result. Am I in the right?
I have, like I said, my tool shed. So in my book, there's several different things and different ways of looking at things that I offer, so that if you want to make some changes and you don't know where to start from, here's some ideas. And these ideas might bring you new ideas yourself. I don't claim to have the answer for everyone. In fact, I truly invite people to listen to themselves, listen to their inner wisdom, because that's where they're going to realize, oh, this is my path, or this is what's right for me. I just want to head them in that direction to know that it's possible to be in a happier, healthier place, and that taking a different road. This road's paved.
So how does somebody know, and I'm really digging this down because I want to help people understand the importance of getting their brain on board and brain health. How does somebody know if their brain's on board or not?
When I'm working with someone in person or over the phone, they'll feel calmer. It's like if you were to rate your discomfort on a scale of 1 to 10. And I often do this, because once you do like tapping or something else, you can easily forget how stressed you were or how anxious or whatever it is. So I have them rated on a scale of 1 to 10. And usually on people that come to me, they've got stuff going on that's like, oh, mine's about a 15 or 20.
Right.
But let's say it's an 8. And we do some tapping or something, first round, and I'm asking again, okay, did your number shift at all? Oh, it's a 6. Great, we're going in the right direction. I'll work with somebody until they get it to like a 2 or a 3. Sometimes it's even gone. And they'll report a few things. One is that they feel calmer and that they have more clarity. And those are the pieces that I'm looking for. Did we calm the nervous system? Is the stress or anxiety or that feeling in your stomach That's another thing that I have a lot of people when I'm working have physical sensations. So they'll say, oh, my shoulders are really tight, or my stomach is in knots. And I'll even do tapping on those sensations. And we will assess on a scale of 1 to 10, okay, where are you with those body sensations? And usually within a round or two of tapping, those have shifted.
Yeah.
So those are all indicators that your brain is on board. And I'm wanting to say your body is too, because the body is such a vital component. And I think there's intelligence within our body. I mean, I haven't studied this, but I've heard like our heart has intelligence, and our stomach, the immune system. And so I think we're on our way to something that we're really in the infancy of.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
It's very exciting. And I haven't mentioned, but yeah, I regularly teach my clients EFT and tapping and walk them through it. And I'll teach them, I've got a toolbox that I share. In fact, listeners, if they haven't yet, can go to mindflipping.com, and on the home page, get some videos where among those I teach EFT and faster EFT and bilateral stimulation and mindfulness. And so listeners can get all these videos free at mindflipping.com. But I'll often say, that this is for any unwanted feeling, and that includes, to your point, a physical feeling. And you can, works wonderfully at shifting, releasing all types of feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah, physical and emotional.
Which is part of why I wrote the title of my book, Tired and Hungry No More, because tired can be, like we did that round of tapping I started with, you could be exhausted, or you could be tired of a situation, or tired of feeling stuck, or, like anything that you're tired of, you can do tapping on.
Tired of being sick and tired.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wow. So we covered a lot, and we've only touched the surface. I'd love to dig a lot more, but I want to respect your time and our listeners. So as we wrap things up, do you have any final thoughts, requests, anything that you want to leave with our listeners now?
Well, if you're interested in looking at some of my tapping, I've got Tapping with Phyllis is one of my tabs on my website. And I also have a YouTube channel with videos, tapping videos, and some of them are tapping without words. I have one tapping and breathing. I use that with people who are super emotional and they aren't even in a place to process words. So we just do breathing and tapping, and that's on there. And then just a whole bunch of short, like 3-minute videos on specific topics.
And those that you said are on YouTube and also at phyllisginsberg.com, or?
Right. There's some on my website, and then the link to YouTube would have the rest of them.
Excellent. And that link we'll put at mindflipping.com, episode 85. Awesome. Well, Phyllis, thank you so much for, the inspiration, the insight about positive psychology, EFT, all brain science, brain health, all this great stuff. I appreciate all the work that you do, and I love you. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Rick. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.